Hi, everyone, and welcome to Legal Limelight. Today we have an amazing guest. Her name is one you all know. We have Hayley Paige on today. She is one of the top fashion designers in the country and around the world. Hayley has gone through a lot this year. She's going to be recording and joining us live from her account. She is Cheval. So we're going to talk about some of the legal battles that she faced, where she is now, what she's working on, and we are so excited.
Hey everyone, good to see you. Hi girl.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. So where in the world is Haley today?
I'm in Palm Beach, Florida,
Oh,
and I've got my trusty little assistant behind me when he's
oh,
joining us.
it's so great. And we get to see all your shoes behind. I absolutely love it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you know what? I emailed you. We have a bunch of mutual connections, and I know that you've been very vocal in this space. You've been speaking at law events too, which is not something that most fashion designers do, but it's something that is it's a mission that I think and a purpose that you and I both share. I wrote my like law school thesis essentially on personal name trademarks in the fashion industry and how careful designers need to be because it's an overlap of their personal identities and souls essentially mixed with business. So thank you for joining today. I'm excited to chat.
Absolutely. I feel like personal experience sometimes is the best way to learn, even though it's typically the longer, harder route.
Yeah. So why don't you just give us like an update generally on like how you're doing and what you have going on?
Yes, well, I am very much at the other side of a pretty long storm, and I had a really productive settlement in my lawsuit, which is rare. Not everybody has the
It's true.
opportunity to, come to that outcome. And I'm really grateful because I purchased the entire IP catalog, so I have full ownership over my name now, as well as all the designs and the aesthetic. And I'm also no longer under a non-compete. So I
Great.
am able to get back to the industry that I love the most. And there's obviously a lot that I've learned in this whole process. And so I think part of just moving forward is carrying the lessons and giving them to everyone else in case it'll help.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to give some just quick tips on like what you probably would have done differently or some advice you give to aspiring young designers?
Sure. I think the main general piece of advice that I've been taking through this whole process and even in the now is that nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems.
Yeah.
And, there's so many highs and so many lows in business in general. And it really is a part of the journey. And I think if you can maintain your humility when things are going really well and you can stay super grounded in that, it's really important. And then inversely, when things are really dark and scary and you're losing control, can you hold on to your enthusiasm for what your craft is or what your contribution is?
My sister-in-law and I, who actually she's a top wedding planner out in Colorado. So Carly Wild and I, we always talk about how we call it riding the wave. We call it RTW. When things get stressful, we just like are like RTW, got to ride the wave because when it's good, but you always have to stay humble and
Yeah.
grounded because
Yeah.
you know that the drop is coming, but when the drop comes, you don't get too sad and you don't get broken because you know that it's on to the next big thing. So I love that you said that.
Yes, everything is temporary, even the good stuff, especially the bad stuff.
Yeah. So in terms of you mentioned you bought your IP portfolio outright. You now own the designs. I'm assuming you own social media handles, domains, things like that too. So where are you with the taking your brand? Are you continuing the same path that you were on, or are you moving into a different direction?
I have found myself in a very exciting conundrum because in going through a legal dispute where I was under restrictions, I really just decided for myself I'm going to find a way to design and create, even if it's in a non competitive category. And I had such an incredible community and support system really helping me build this. And it is a small business, it's a labor of love, and we're so proud of it. But it also requires so much of our attention and focus. And we're such a small team that now that I have this new door, or I should say an old door that's opened up again, I want to be able to do it all and do it both at the same time or weave them together. And so right now I am just running a really thorough process and getting my house in order and recognizing, how am I going to divide the time and appropriately manage everything. Because I think with business and careers, it's all about managing your attention and making decisions. And I don't want to rush, even though I'm so excited to get back out there. I want to make sure it is the right step forward and that everything is nice and structured well, and we're having those difficult conversations up front and really front loading the process.
No, I love that you said that because especially as female entrepreneurs, right? There are so many moving pieces to being a successful business owner. And you're not just a business owner, you're a creative. So you wear two hats in business, and then you have your home and you have your relationships. There's so much. So do you have any tips to people like me who are also, I'm an artist in my law career, but I'm also an entrepreneur and a mom, and I run my home. Do you have any advice to people who want to continue to excel and grow and have big visions while also staying grounded and building that foundation?
I tend to gravitate toward the hats that look best on me and that fit really well.
Love that.
You definitely have to wear a lot of hats. And there are times when you find yourself in a role, just kind of questioning yourself and saying, I'm sure there is somebody that can do this better than I can, and it's really good to lean into those strengths and ask for help and find people that can help support your business. Of course, when your resources are low, you really don't have a choice because it's a small team and you say, okay, well, this work needs to get done, so I'm going to have to do it. And so there is really just this big learning curve with all of it. And I think one of the other things that I try to recognize is how much pressure we tend to put on ourselves. And we suffer a lot more, of course, in our imagination than in reality, but trying not to catastrophize and keeping it very premium in your brain of like, these are the 3 things that I need to accomplish today. It's just 3 things. And I know I'm not going to get to my list of 10, but what will make me feel like I'm moving the ball forward in those baby step ways each and every day? And I know a lot of times people feel like, well, I'm just going to be compromising this, or like, something that I haven't had the pleasure of experiencing yet is mom guilt. The idea that like you want this career and you want to have so much, for yourself to contribute, but then you have these tiny, gorgeous humans that you have to keep alive, and so there's always this balance and this feeling of, am I giving enough of myself? And I think that's just part of the taking inventory and being really, really kind to yourself in all that you're doing. And recognizing that, even when you're trying to keep moving forward and doing the best you can.
And take over the world.
Exactly. Write it down.
Yeah, no, I love that. So I was in Big Law in New York, and then I had my first son 2 months early during like the peak of the pandemic. And I was so burnt out in my career that I almost like gave up. I almost quit law. I was like, oh, being a lawyer is terrible. It's awful. Like I'm leaving. And then when I had my son early, he was fine. He ended up being, he's great. He runs around. He's a big kid now. But at that time, it was just like this wake up call for me to like you said, just sit back and look at everything and figure out what my main priorities are and what hat do I need to wear today. So I put on my new mom hat. And then as I got back into work, that mom hat is on, and I built my work life around, instead of going back to that work environment, I started my own practice. I built my own clients so I can have my own control over my life. And so I think, having remote working and even social media, it's such an amazing blessing where we can, like you right now are able to record this live and be present with your family while you still are doing the things. So yes, I thank you for sharing that, because it's real. The mom guilt, the balancing while growing, it's real.
Yeah, it's such a process. And I think a lot of times when it feels overwhelming and all consuming, it's really good to think big picture of like, okay, what are your basic operating costs, and to really try to streamline it for yourself, because the devil's always in the details, and when you get stuck in the weeds, you can feel just like, you know, lost, and there's way too much to do, and it becomes a little more all over consuming. But I love hearing your story, and I'm really curious, if you had your son in the peak of COVID, were you in the delivery room alone?
Oh, I thank you for saying that. So, because we're in New York, and I know that in Manhattan, well, I live in New Jersey, but we're right outside of New York. But so at that time, I know people who were in Manhattan that had to deliver alone. It was like a week. They did it for a week, and then they realized that this is ridiculous.
Like,
So
no,
no,
I
I was
want
lucky.
to be alone.
I was so lucky.
Oh,
Because
what a warrior.
yeah, there's something, people say like there's something about NICU moms, and because we were in the hospital for 2 months after that, NICU moms and the COVID moms, but just being a mom in general is a lot.
Yeah, and I also have to praise you for your adaptability, because that is something I took away from what you were saying, and that, you really shifted your life to work for you and this newcomer into your, whole world. And when you're able to
Yeah.
do that and still deliver your message and know that there's so many ways to get there, you don't have to follow just one blueprint, it makes it a little more manageable.
And the main takeaway, I think, from your story, and I tie this into content I talk about, is the power of ownership. Owning what you build, owning what you create. And it's something that gets missed in business and with creatives early, the importance and the power of owning your company and owning your intellectual property assets. So now that you've owned your IP, do you feel that was that a game changer for you in the direction of your company?
Yes, I feel like ownership first kind of comes from this knowingness of just this can never be retaken, right? Like when you have a
Mm,
name, you think that, okay, I'll always be able to use my name. In my case, it did kind of flip my mindset and my world upside down. But I realized that things like my reputation, my skills, what I've learned over the years, my relationships, all these things were still very much intact and very much constant. Those things I could rely on. And I felt so blessed to have that, that it made the idea of not potentially having ownership over my name and art not top of mind. I'm going to fight
it's
for it,
amazing.
but I'm in this scenario. I got myself into it. It's accountability. And now that I own it, of course, I fought tooth and nail to get it. And for me, I think I need to really honor it and protect it moving forward. But I also share the mindset that as an artist or a designer, once you create something and you put it out into the world, it becomes somebody else's. The best part of dressmaking is that moment she says yes to the dress and it becomes her dress. It's not mine anymore. And so I've always kind of had that mentality. And I think it's good to detach it from that mindset of like, oh, it's mine, I have to hold on to it forever. It's more of this flow. And so as long as at the top it's protected, and that, now that I have it, I'm doing all the right things, checks and balances to make sure it's going to be safe moving forward. But you also have to kind of release some of it. So
Yes, no, it's true. I think you hit on something when I work with, especially, I feel like in today's world, you could start small and you could be lean and mean team, but you can grow into, 100 million plus company. It's pretty easy to do with social media. So we advise a lot of those companies, but we're not talking about a ton of cash, right? Maybe they do really well, but their profit margins are tight, whatever it is. When we advise clients, I work with them and I say exactly what you said is, figuring out what's the most important thing to protect, and understanding that you're creative and you want to be out there. You don't need to be this crazy aggressive business. You don't have to send everyone a cease and desist letter. You can let people share your content, and you could have them share your designs. But figuring out what the core and the baseline in is protection, I think is something that's fundamental for every single business owner or even just personal brand out there, knowing what that is and protecting it legally.
absolutely, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's tough to know that even when you're starting the
Yeah.
business. Okay, I have to get all these documents in order. I have to have my NDA, my templates, you try your best. But then as you go through business, things kind of change. And even for TV, when they send you a release form, okay, you've got to sign this, and it's for a news channel, they own everything in perpetuity, and
Yeah.
like your name and likeness, they can sell your content. So it's like, what do you do then? You don't get the TV opportunity then if they're not willing to negotiate. And so it's so much of it is really what is going to be worth it? Where's the risk reward? Because a lot of it is all a risk.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And like from my end, like I'm sure you've done this before, like where you've worked with lawyers that over lawyer. It's a thing. It's over lawyering where sometimes the lawyer will just not see it in a vacuum instead of like, guys, I need to do this, so just minimize the risk. But I think the takeaway, and there's a viral Taylor Swift clip too, where they ask her what's the best advice, and it's get a good lawyer. You repeated that in one of your videos that I clipped. It's like my favorite. It's just like, guys, get a good lawyer.
It's the unsexy answer that is paramount.
No, I love that. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, I would like to know a little bit more about what your impact has been in Congress and meeting with, you met with Senator Warren, I believe.
Yes, I met with a few senators on both sides of the political spectrum, and it was a truly wild experience. But I think a part of it just felt very full circle and almost like closure for the entire 3.5 years of this. And it's always cathartic when you're able to share your story from your voice and feel like it's being heard with respect. And we want to know this because it could help it positively impact case law. And so to have that, it was something I will cherish forever. And I know there's a lot of work still that needs to be done with respect to the non-compete rulings. And I'm still going to continue to fight and do what I can to, bring education to this area, not just as an employee that had an extreme case of a non-compete unpaid, but also I am a business owner now, and I know why you need to also have protections as a business. And so again, finding that harmony in everything so that there is a win-win and there are parties participating that all feel like they're being seen and protected.
I love that. Thank you. And you've done a fantastic job keeping up. I'm personally, I share that mission with you. This is why I do my content and videos. Not everyone, unfortunately, can afford lawyers, but even if you can't, there's invaluable resources online, and there's also great pro bono organizations like the Volunteer Lawyers of the Arts. They're in New York, they're in LA, like they're all over. So yeah, we'll just keep getting the word out.
Can I ask you a piece of advice?
Yes, of course.
For anybody listening right now that is starting a company, whether it's small business, it's product focused on some level, do you find that there is a lot of protection in design through patents or copyrights? And like, what is your general take on if you're minimal in what you can spend in legal, how do you protect, your designs?
If you are super minimal, so let's say you either are so minimal where you have nothing, you have no funding, you really can't afford anything, take a piece out of Sarah Blakely's book and get on the USPTO, watch my videos. You can DIY this stuff. You don't need lawyers to file trademarks, copyrights, patents. It's challenging, and the chances of success increase significantly by using lawyers. But if you really are at that point where you can't afford a lawyer, I would first start with the VLA. It's a great organization that helps artists and designers. And then I would also educate yourself, because some of these things, having some protection, even if you did it yourself, is probably better than no protection.
Right.
And then if you're at the stage where you can, you budget, 10 to 15K, ask friends and family for loans, like whatever it is, if you can invest that chunk, I would say that's a good number to do the initial. You incorporate, you do your trademarks, you file for your copyrights, and if you have design patents, picking what the core because you know, as a designer, you make so many different designs. Maybe figuring out what your signature design is, that's the most important. That's going to get you the most value out of protection. That's the starting point.
Right. That's great advice. I'd love to summarize these and add them to a Girl You Might Know foundation because they're quick takeaways that I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed and daunted by the idea of like, am I going on LegalZoom and learning this? And there
Yes.
really is a do-it-yourself giddy up to it, especially in the beginning if you're kind of limited on your resources. So I appreciate that take.
Yeah, I'm happy to help and contribute anything. Yeah, I believe in abundance, and you know, I think law has been gate kept for so long. You think of a lawyer in a big tower in New York, hidden away, that you have to pay thousands of dollars to get access to. But I think with the power of the internet now, and even these like just connecting with people live, the information is coming out, and it's there. It's there for people to take advantage of.
I love that. Amanda has a question for us, or well, for you.
Yeah.
It's an IP question, but she's curious if you need permission to use the Yelp reviews someone left on your business,
Oh, that's
on the website
interesting.
or social media. And I know we can't provide legal advice, but
Yeah, this
you know,
isn't legal advice. We could talk
yes.
about it in like a general way. So there's something called copyright. Copyright protects creative works or written works. So technically, if it's long enough, and it's someone's like testimonial, as a best practice, you would. But you don't need to send them a formal long agreement to sign. Permission could be in a quick message. And I know some social media people use this too, where, hey, I would love to use your photo on my account. Do you give us permission? And it could be done that way. So that's probably the best way to go.
Oh, that's great. So you can just say, I loved this review. I'd love to share it. Are you okay with it?
Yep.
And I would even think you could bleep out their name or, you know, do something where if they don't want they want their anonymity, you know,
If they
maybe
want their anonymity, yeah, I think what you're getting at is like, what's the terms of it? So you're asking them for permission, which is a license. That's when we say use a license. It's just permission. And in a license, typically it's the who, what, when, where, why. Who are you giving rights to? What are you giving rights to? Where are you giving them the rights? Why are you giving them the rights? And there's a couple other things, but that's like the core of a license. So when it's low risk like that, you know, as long as you have permission, you know, you're okay. But it's when you get into brand partnerships or bigger collaborations that typically you'll want to put those the who, what, when, where, why, and more in a legal, a written legal agreement.
Okay, got it. And we have another question. I love this.
I'm not seeing these. Sorry,
Okay,
maybe I have
good.
to scroll down.
I'll just read them to you.
Okay, cool.
So Sarah's curious if it's more advantageous to file a patent as an individual or as a business entity. Like, is it more protective to go through like an LLC as opposed to just yourself if you're doing it yourself?
Yeah, so let's and yes, now I see the cons. This video will be saved and we'll repost. So in typical lawyer fashion, it really does depend. But usually the purpose of a company is to not do business as yourself. It's to have you create a whole separate identity and you can work for that business or you can own that business. So the question, sometimes it comes down to that you can get tax benefits or disadvantages if you do it in your name versus the business. Typically when you're starting out, these questions are, they don't make or break your business, but if you are already growing and you have sufficient money, like we said, I would speak to a corporate attorney to make sure that you've incorporated the right way. And then if you are doing design patent, and there's people out there like even like Angela, our patent partner, like we'll take retainers for like an hour just to give you, hey, this is what you need to do, not like actually even filing the patent for you. We can give you that like initial advice on mapping it out. So yeah, it really just will depend on your industry and your situation.
Got that. Okay, well, I know who that is, so I'll have her
Yeah,
connect with you.
yeah, I'm happy to chat.
Amazing. I don't see any other more questions, but I love that we're going to post this live or not live. We'll post it on the feed, right? And then people can for the questions in the comments section.
Definitely, yeah, and I'm sure our team is happy to answer. And if you guys have any questions, you can email me. I'm at fw@esca.legal. I try to be as accessible as possible and avoid that like stuffy, gate-kept world. We want people to feel good about being empowered about their IP.
What a good resource you are. Well, thank you.
I'm so glad I didn't get to meet you in person yet. I'm sure we will, but thank you so much for coming on the show. It was fun.
My pleasure. Of course. Winnie says bye. She's sleeping right here.
Oh, so adorable. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Take care. We'll see you soon, hopefully in person.
Yes, and thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. This was Legal Limelight. We're here every Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you next week. Bye.